Hello viewer, welcome to The Big Issue, where we dissect burning issues that affects us as a nation. I am Obi Chukwemeka Uti. Various reactions continue to trail the level of moral decadence in Nigeria's primary and secondary schools as the situation assumed a frightening dimension. The sex scandal video that has dominated the social media space in the last few days calls for an awakening of the entire system. On Monday precisely, a mother of a 10-year-old pupil of Christian school took to the social media claiming her daughter was raped during a trip to Dubai, where students had traveled to represent their school. However, Christian school has debunked the allegation of rape, as well as pregnancy tests being conducted on any pupil. The said sex video shows the most debasing sexual acts by children yet to attain teenagehood. How did we get here? Who's to blame for all this? Go back, please, quickly. How did we get here? Who's to blame for this level of moral decadence? Our focus on the big issue today is Nigeria's young population and the stench of perversion. Driving the conversation is a school administrator of many years' experience, former principal of King's College, Lagos, and he retired as a director in the Federal Ministry of Education. Asiwaju Oladele Olakweju, thank you for joining me on The Big Issue.
Thank you for listening to me and thank you for inviting me.
Great. Mr. Olakweju, as a professional with many years of experience in the education system, practicing both in close interaction with students and pupils, especially at their formative years and administratively, I would like you to share your experience back in those days vis-a-vis what's obtainable today.
Well, thank you for inviting me once again. I think as a way of sharing my experience, I would want to rely on the strong words you have used for the topic we are discussing, the stench of perversion. I'm so much interested in that language of stench. For instance, in terms of decay, when something starts to decay, because before it becomes a stench, it must have taken some time. So that means the perversion and the pervasive tendencies of our young ones did not just start today. But I think in my own days, we had a way of curtailing it. Well, we didn't have the advantage of social media, so there were no distractions on the social media. We only relied on the analog and by and large some digital introductions. But I think every parent must have experienced some perversion. Even when we were young, there was a tendency of some of us being pervasive, rolling out of the. But I think the moral rectitude that time was able to curtail all this. Now, the age we are in now is an age of lawlessness, and the level of pervasiveness of the society is so much. And I'm sure if I want to rely on some of these experiences, I think in 2013, I took my students to Dubai, and we were able to at least monitor them, and there was no embarrassment to the nation. Of course, my own take on the matter is that at what age do you expose your youth to some of these things? Of course, I did not take 10-year-old or 9-year-old students to Dubai. Most of the students who took to Dubai were of middle age. They were almost leaving the college, and they had actually been tutored by us. And so whatever we did in Dubai was a reflection of the level of discipline we had given them before. So that's my own take on the matters for now.
Considering the level of moral decadence cutting across cultism, bullying in schools, examination malpractice, sexual depravity in our nation's schools, in your view, where did we miss it?
Well, I think I will recall back in 2014, during the common entrance examination for the federal JS1 students. That time we normally had two examinations. The first one was the national common entrance. Then the second one was the placement exam, which is conducted by the Federal Ministry of Education. The first one is conducted by NECO. That year, I sat the pupils into the auditorium in the college, and I did a video on them. I said, out of all of you, I think there were about 200 or 250 pupils. Out of you, how many of you will confess that one uncle or one sister in the hall wrote or dictated the answers to you? More than 80% of them raised up their hand. You know, these are innocent children. They raised up their hands and said it is true, or it was true that some uncles and brothers and sisters dictated answers for common entrance into JS1. So this is the level at which we are. Examination malpractice are rocking the nation. And the ones we are having now is a build-up for many years. If in 2014, I could experience that kind of thing in Case College, where pupils from Lagos schools were able to cheat in their various exams before they came into the second exam, then you expect it to have developed to a stupor now, that a stench that we are seeing. So, and then the pervasiveness is not only for the examination malpractice. Conduct, character, in terms of moral rectitude, is no longer there. And most of these are from the home. So I'm saying in essence that the society is so pervasive that you don't expect these children to come out clean. The level of stench in the society in terms of morality, in terms of corruption, in terms of electoral malpractice, in terms of examination malpractice, is all over for us to see. If you are a child who sees my parents as cheating in the electoral matters, then that is a license for me to cheat in the examination. Corruption is all over. And that's why we blame parents, we blame the society, we blame government. Because government must have a zero tolerance. And that's why I commend Lagos State government for the two interventions they have done in Dowen College and in Chrisland.
You're commending the Lagos State government for taking action and shutting down Chrisland schools. Many would ask, after that move, what next? After all, Dowen College was shut down as well, and the issue of Sylvester Omonore's death went back and forth. In fact, right now, we don't know where it stands.
Well, I think running government is not about emotions. It's about due process. What happened in Dowen College is just a symptom, and this one is another symptom of what we are going to have further in the society. These are just tips in the iceberg. We are going to have more of the Dowen College, more of the Chrisland thing in our society, as long as we do not apply the rules the way they should be applied. For instance, I will not subscribe to the fact that the private schools have a lot of monitoring to be done by government. Because if you establish private schools and the close monitoring is not done by the quality assurance agency of both the federal and the state, then we are likely going to have more of this in our hands. And most of the things they even assure are only the cognitive. You know, in education, we have three domains. We have the cognitive, we have the psychomotor, and we have the affective. The affective is the character. In King's College, in those days, when we are going to have our vision statements, we place character before learning. It was not learning and character. We say character first before learning. Because for us, we felt that a child must behave very well before you can now build in him some level of cognition. Cognitive is very important, but the character is more important than the cognitive. And that's why we emphasize on character and training to be a better person in society. So I will not say the Lagos State government is intervening well, but let them do more of prevention rather than cure. Prevention, that is, let them monitor those schools effectively, and then we'll be able to rectify some of the anomalies in the system.
Let's talk about the role of supervision of this age target, especially because they are in their formative years. How important is supervision over these children at this time?
Well, supervision is very important, and the supervision must take into cognizance the fact that there are changes in the societal values. Of course, value must be same value of honesty must be maintained. These children are growing up in a digital world, and you have to have a digital mind before you can monitor a child that is digital minded. That is, the parents and teachers must up their skills in terms of digitization. If your child has a digital advantage over you, then the child might be able to bamboozle you and teach you and not allow you to know what is actually breathing. It was when this Christian thing was on stage that I knew that something like Lucky, that app, and I went to it, saw so many disgusting things there. And see that the MTA or the network subscribers and the global network providers must be very careful about what they post into people's phones. There are so many times that you want to open your phone and some things will disturb you. Some pornographic things will even show up on your phone without even asking for it. I think there must be the level of legislation by the society about to which extent can we expose our children to some of these things. Some of these social media apps must be closed so that it's not only for adult view. When you say adult view, the young child is interested in knowing why it's only for adults only. They are curious. They want to know why is this thing for adults. So these are some of the things that must be taken consideration when we are passing our laws about cyber matters in the nation.
I actually asked that question on supervision because these pupils were out on an international trip where they were representing the school, and this quite disturbing video, to say the least, even though it's not been confirmed whether they are the ones there or not, was allegedly made. Though the Lagos State government as well as other relevant agencies in the state are said to be investigating the matter, but in your view, what is the school's level of complicity in this matter?
Well, I will not be judgmental because I read the script from the college. The college is playing the holier than thou. If not for the exposition by the mother, this thing will have been swept under the carpet like the Doan College thing. I think the level of complicity of Chrisland cannot be determined for now. Let the investigations be concluded. But my take on it is that to whom much is given, much is expected. Chrisland is one of the Ivy League schools in Lagos, and it has delivered a lot of pupils to the education world. There are so many of their products have graduated and they are in good places. This is just what to call an embarrassment to the college. The Awoshika, who owns the school, meant well for the society by establishing a school. But for the teachers and those who went with them, they said they were able to monitor the pupils. But these things are, neither here nor there. You must have a 24-hour watch over these children because they are very, 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 very indulgent. They want to break banks. It's not only for those who went to Dubai, even in their college, there is tendency for the male pupils to want to break banks and move to the girls' hostel or do some things and so on. But if you have a system that closely monitors, then they will have been able to prevent these things. For instance, the truth and dare something. I had to go into the Google because in my 67 years of adult life, I've never had something like their truth and dares. It was there I learned about it. Some of these things, these children know it, and they do it secretly without their parents knowing. That's why I want to invite both the school administrators and so on to be digitalized in all their approaches. Let them also move at the level of the pupils. Because if the pupils are higher than you in terms of digitization, then you are not there. They will just you are just being in the dark. But if you want to be in the open, let digitalization work for both the pupils, the administrator, and government.
Okay, some quarters have said that these, like many other incidents that have happened in private schools, mostly of the elitist class, brings to bear the fact that most of these schools are only after the huge investments made by parents or guardians, but actual grooming of the children is lacking. What do you make of this?
Well, that is the fallacy of hasty generalization. The fact that we have 2 or 3 cases does not rub off the success stories of some of these institutions. Of course, when we look at the learning achievement in WAEC, NECO, and so on, some of these students, some of these schools have made it, and they have produced brilliant children. But some of these indulgences and overbearing tendencies of our children in terms of pervasiveness must be checked. And it's only when we check this that we can actually have better pupils for better universities in Nigeria. Of course, when you talk of cultism, yes, these children, it was very surprising to me that cultism is now very, very prevalent, even in primary schools. How do you get it? The social media, the films they watch, the Nollywood actors who rather than do what you call healthy filming, healthy recording, they will go into babalawo, into sexual whatever, and when the students see it, they will copy. For instance, why do we have pornography as an app? A society must be able to ban some of these things. It's only when you become an adult that you are exposed to sexual life. Sexual life is not for under 10. I'm surprised that and then there was a parent that said that when that is a pastor, when he interviewed the daughter, the knowledge of the daughter in terms of sexual things was enormous, was embarrassingly above the age. And then if you want to be honest, if you gather about 20 pupils especially from these Ivy League schools, gather them to a room and expose them and then let them talk freely, they will tell you of the knowledge they have of sexual matters, which is very enormous. So the truth and dares game is embarrassing at that level of 9 to 10-year-old.
The threat of this immoral behavior among teens calls for serious concern. This brings up the question, are these unholy acts a function of peer influence in schools, or does it stem from the home front?
I'm happy you are so intelligent the way you have asked this question. And then the answer will be both. I recall there was a time in King's College when a parent came to me and said, "Principal, I want to withdraw my son from King's College because the peer influence is making him behave one kind." And I said to the other parent, I said, "Look, if your child had been groomed well from home, you would have been able to positively influence others. Because to me, light covers darkness, not darkness covers light. if your child is with that light, positive disposition to good character, he should be able to influence his friends rather than the negative ones influencing the light, as it were, in quotes. I believe that a good child who has a good training should positively influence his peers rather than his peers influencing him. And that's the way, because we believe that peer influence is very, 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 very much around with us. And that's why the adult presence, even in the college, must be there. It's not for you to leave children to the classes and so on to learn alone. In the boarding school, you must be able to allow some wardens and adults to at least monitor what they are doing. It's not only for them to just go to bed and don't monitor what's happening. In fact, sometimes when I was in kids college, I carry out raids in the night. I've just entered their hostels and then look at around and so on. That is the way things should be done, other than leaving them to their own means. If you leave them to them, of course, when in 2010, I introduced the compulsory IT into kids college, the experience I had was that most of my students were sleeping during the day. And I found out that it was because in the night, they will use their laptops to do some browsing and then browse till night. And in fact, the network providers were even giving out free airtime in the night, encouraging these pupils to be awake all night, not doing night vigil on unholy matters. So I had to review that policy, and then we had to do some other adjustments so that it would not affect them academically.
Looking at the spate of moral decadence amongst preteens and teens and young adults, ranging from ritual killings, internet fraud, accessories to kidnapping, sexual depravity, etc., shouldn't the government declare a state of emergency on this moral crisis if we are to save the future of our nation?
And that's laughable, because we don't have a government that is even morally upright. It's like, of course, you cannot give what you don't have. Look at political class. For instance, I don't know why, for instance, up till now, that is to be a member of the National Assembly, it has to be a permanent thing. If you allow National Assembly members, legislators to be on part-time basis, you will see that the quality of people that will be in our political class will improve. But because of the enchantment of money, monetary gains, the best way to make money now is not through the yahoo, it's to winning an election. Then everything gets to you. So we have to have people who are morally upright to run our political class, to run our political affairs before they can legislate on issues that border on discipline and courtism and examination malpractice. For instance, like I said, if a parent is electorally corrupt, how will the right parent be able to monitor and clean up an examination malpractice in our schools? The corrupt always yield to the corrupt.
Now, let's talk about that Cybercrime Act 2015. It actually prohibits producing child pornography, offering or making child porn available, distributing and transmitting child pornography with the aid of computers. In fact, the Lagos State government has pronounced 14 years jail term for those spreading child pornography. Let's consider the level of morality in our society. Minors were taped and adults took to social media to spread the said video. Where do we start addressing this abnormality?
Well, I think you know that the abnormality is here. It's not that here and there. If an accident happens in Nigeria today, and a lot of people are gasping for breath, what people indulge in doing is to video them rather than helping them to the hospital. They prefer posting their video on the social media, happening now and so on, rather than being their brother's keeper and helping them like the Good Samaritan did in the parable of Jesus. I'm sure that we actually need to come back to our senses and have a legislation on cybercrime. And even the legislation should not just be on the paper. It should be publicized. There should be a lot of publicity to a lot of people that if you spread viral news, this pornography virally, you are liable to be charged to court. I think that the issue of Chrisland now, a lot of people are looking for that video. They are not looking at it from the point of being concerned about the future of this country. They are just lacking the entertainment aspect of it. They want to see children, underage children having sex. That's what they are doing. For goodness sake, who would have even recorded the video? Was it deliberately recorded? Was it done to embarrass the nation? Because this is a national embarrassment. Because these are ambassadors of the nation.
Back in the days, I remember the monitoring function of government ministries, agencies, and departments, that are in charge of education. They arrive unannounced. They keep, to keep schools in check and on their toes. Are they still functional today, or would you say they have become docile?
Well, I think that question is very, very intelligent. And I think that monitoring, at least the quality, we call it quality assurance. Okay. In those days, it's inspection. And then we believe that it's not inspection that is needed. It's about quality assurance. That is, the input must be there before the output. We believe that if you empower and fund the agencies very well, agency for quality assurance. For instance, for goodness sake, it was Dora Quilly that made us to know NAFDAC. NAFDAC had existed for long, but when a salary leader came there, the functions and activities of NAFDAC became very prominent. We need another Dora Quilly in the education sector, especially in quality assurance, all over the states, to be able to reposition the quality assurance agencies to doing their work. And I think that brings me down to the fact that we need the active age of between 50 to 60, not the age of 60 to 65 that the government has somersaulted into by extending the tenure or the age retirement in the public service for teachers. It's a disservice. For instance, I don't see a 65-year-old person being as active and more concerned about monitoring than somebody who is youthful and who has experience. Of course, between 60 and 65, you have gathered the experience. But in most schools in Nigeria, once you become assistant director or deputy director, you hardly teach. So when you extend the non-teaching periods of those people on that grade, to 65, instead of recruiting young and vibrant, unemployed education graduates who are now riding Okada into the education sector. This policy somersault is part of the problem we have in the country. Now, monitoring is very necessary, but what age of monitors? What experience of monitors? If you tell me that, and then monitoring requires a lot of funding. Government is not funding in the place where I am now. In the public schools there are just less than 10% of teachers in those schools that are funded by government. All other teachers are either part-time or PTA teachers and so on. So when government cannot even fund the mainstream education, how do they fund the monitoring of the education sector?
Before I finally let you go, all groups of society, talking about parents, government, educators, religious leaders, and all, seem to have failed. How do we begin to retrace our steps in educating the younger generation?
Education for all is the responsibility of all. It's not for us to leave it to government. It's not for us to leave it to the teachers. It's for us as parents, as members of the society, and as citizens of Nigeria, be alive to what goes on in the education sector. We need to cooperate collectively as a team, both parents, both the teachers, both government, policymakers, both politicians and both even the man on the street. For instance, the man on the street must be able to see if there is a child who is in the school uniform during the school hours. It's not only as a parent that you should talk. As a concerned member of the society, you must be able to ask the child or the pupil, why are you not in school? And then be able to be the unannounced monitor or quality assurer. Because definitely, if you leave it to government, who is government? We are all part of government.
In the last 30 minutes or thereabouts, I have been speaking with a former principal of King's College, a retired director in the Federal Ministry of Education, Asiwaju Oladele Olakpeju. Thank you for sharing your views with me on the big issue.
It's my pleasure.
Our lead discussant has raised pertinent issues around our focus on Nigeria's young population and the stench of perversion. Let's go take the news update. When we return, our panelists will expand the conversation. Join us again.